In the heart of Mumbai, amidst the chaos of honking rickshaws, street vendors shouting their wares, and the constant hum of people rushing to their destinations, there lived a young woman named Anjali. Her corner of the world was nothing glamorous. A small wooden stool placed neatly by the side of a busy road, surrounded by baskets filled with marigolds, roses, and jasmine flowers. These weren't just flowers. They were her lifeline. Every day, from sunrise to sunset, she sat there selling blooms to anyone who passed by, office workers looking for a gift, mothers buying garlands for prayer, or couples wanting something romantic. Anjali wasn't like other girls her age. While most would dream of fancy clothes, parties, or maybe even love, all Anjali dreamed about was how to make ends meet. She lived in a cramped little hut in one of the city's many slums with her mother, who had fallen ill years ago. The illness wasn't anything rare or mysterious. It was just the kind that comes from years of hard work without proper care. But it still left them both struggling. Anjali worked tirelessly every single day because she knew that if she didn't earn enough, there wouldn't be food on the table or medicine for her mom. Her hands were rough from handling stems all day, stained yellow from marigold petals, and smelled faintly of rosewater. Despite the hardships, Anjali always tried to smile at her customers. She believed that happiness could spread through kindness, even if it came in the form of a simple flower. People often said she had a way of making even the smallest purchase feel special. "These are not just flowers," she'd say cheerfully. "They carry good luck, blessings, and sometimes even love." But life wasn't easy for someone like her. Living in poverty meant walking a tightrope every day, trying not to fall into despair. And one evening, everything did fall apart. It started as an ordinary day. Anjali woke up early, packed her baskets full of fresh flowers, and headed out to her usual spot near the market. The morning went well. She sold quite a few bouquets to regular customers and even managed to chat with some of them. By late afternoon, though, things began to slow down. Fewer people stopped by, and those who did only bought a stem or two. Still, Anjali remained hopeful. As dusk approached, she decided to pack up her remaining stock and head home. That's when trouble found her. 2 police officers appeared out of nowhere, blocking her path. They looked stern, their expressions unreadable. One of them held up a photograph while the other stared directly at her. Before Anjali could even ask what was happening, they accused her of stealing jewelry from a nearby shop. Stunned, she shook, her head vigorously, insisting she hadn't done anything wrong. "I'm just a flower seller," she pleaded. "Why would I steal?" The officers didn't listen. Instead, they pointed out that a witness claimed to have seen her leaving the area around the time the theft occurred. No matter how much she protested, they refused to believe her. Within minutes, Anjali found herself being handcuffed and shoved into the back of a police van. Panic surged through her as tears streamed down her face. How could this happen? She hadn't stolen anything. All she had were her flowers and the tiny silver ring on her finger, which had been in her family for generations. As the van rattled through the crowded streets, Anjali clutched her hands together tightly. The cold metal of the cuffs pressing against her skin. She thought about her mother waiting at home, worrying where she was. Would anyone believe her innocence? Or was she destined to be swallowed whole by a system that rarely cared about people like her? Little did she know, this arrest was about to change her life forever, but not in the way she expected. Somewhere far away, another story was unfolding, one that would intersect with hers in ways neither of them could imagine. For now, though, all Anjali could do was sit silently, praying that someone somewhere would see the truth. Far away from the chaos of Mumbai streets, in a sleek high-rise building overlooking the Arabian Sea, lived a man named Arjun Khanna. At first glance, he seemed to have it all: money, power, and success. His name was well known across industries, his face often featured in newspapers and magazines. But behind the polished exterior lay a man burdened by loss, loneliness, and unanswered questions. Arjun wasn't always rich. He had grown up poor, much like Anjali, in a tiny village where survival depended on hard work and sheer willpower. Those early struggles shaped him into the man he became, a self-made billionaire who built an empire from scratch. Yet, despite all his achievements, there was one thing money couldn't buy: peace. For 5 long years, his heart carried a wound that refused to heal: the disappearance of his only daughter, Mira. Mira was everything to Arjun. She was smart, kind-hearted, and full of dreams. Unlike her father, who thrived in boardrooms, Mira loved art, music, and travel. Her laughter used to light up their home, turning even the darkest days brighter. But fate dealt them a cruel hand when she vanished during a trip abroad. One moment she was exploring a new country. The next, she was gone without a trace. The news shattered Arjun. Days turned into weeks, then months, and eventually years. But no answers came. The authorities searched tirelessly, following leads that led nowhere. Friends and family tried to console him, telling him to move on, but how could he? Every corner of his penthouse reminded him of her: the paintings she loved, the books she read, the little trinkets she collected over the years. What haunted him most, however, was the memory of a ring. It wasn't just any ring. It was a family heirloom passed down through generations. On Mira's 18th birthday, Arjun had presented it to her with tears in his eyes. "This is more than just jewelry," he'd said. "It's a symbol of our family's strength and love." The ring was delicate, with intricate floral patterns engraved on its surface. To Arjun, it represented everything Mira stood for: beauty, resilience, and hope. When Mira disappeared, so did the ring. Investigators found her backpack abandoned near a remote area, but the ring was missing. Its absence gnawed at Arjun day and night. Had someone taken it? Was it lost forever? Or worse, had something terrible happened to Mira? Without closure, his mind spiraled between anger, guilt, and despair. He threw himself into work, hoping the busyness would dull the pain, but nothing truly helped. Years passed, and though Arjun continued to build his empire, a part of him remained frozen in time. He avoided talking about Mira, fearing that opening up would unleash emotions too overwhelming to handle. Yet whenever he sat alone in his luxurious apartment, staring out at the glittering skyline, memories of her flooded back. Sometimes, late at night, he'd take out an old photograph of her wearing the ring and wonder if he'd ever see it again, or understand what really happened to her. Little did Arjun know, the universe works in mysterious ways. While he wrestled with his grief, life was about to throw him a curveball, one that would connect him to a stranger in ways neither of them could predict. That stranger was Anjali, the flower seller whose world collided with his own in the most unexpected manner. For now, though, Arjun remained unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon, a storm that would bring both pain and clarity, forcing him to confront truths he'd buried deep inside. As fate would have it, this chance encounter wasn't just going to change Anjali's life, it would also force Arjun to face the past he'd been running from. The silver ring, once a symbol of loss, might hold the key to unlocking secrets that had haunted him for years. But before any of that could happen, destiny needed to weave its threads carefully, bringing these two lives together in a way neither of them anticipated. The next morning, Anjali found herself sitting in a crowded courtroom, her heart pounding like a drum. The room buzzed with voices, lawyers whispering to clients, clerks shuffling papers, and the occasional murmur of onlookers. She felt out of place, almost invisible among the chaos. Her worn sari and tired eyes drew little attention from the people around her. But inside, she was anything but calm. Every second felt like an eternity as she waited for the judge to call her case. Her hands trembled as they rested on the wooden railing in front of her. She tried to focus on the proceedings, but her mind kept drifting back to her mother. What would happen if she were convicted? Who would take care of her? Would anyone even believe her side of the story? These questions swirled in her head, making it hard to breathe. She glanced down at her fingers, noticing the silver ring that had been passed down through generations. It gleamed faintly under the harsh fluorescent lights, a small reminder of the family she came from, a family that had always struggled but never gave up. Just then, the doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open, interrupting her thoughts. Everyone turned to see who had entered. A tall man dressed in an expensive suit walked in, his presence commanding immediate attention. He looked out of place in this setting, surrounded by people whose lives seemed worlds apart from his own. This was Arjun Khanna, the billionaire businessman. His face was stern, his posture rigid, as though he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Arjun had been summoned to the court as part of a routine inquiry regarding the alleged theft. Though he wasn't directly involved, his testimony was considered relevant because of his connections to the jewelry shop where the crime supposedly took place. As he scanned the room, his sharp eyes landed on Anjali. At first, he didn't think much of her, just another person caught in the system. But then something caught his eye, something that made his breath hitch. There on her finger was a ring. Not just any ring, it was the ring. The one he had given to his daughter Mira all those years ago. His chest tightened as memories flooded back. For a moment, he thought he might be imagining things. Could it really be the same ring? He blinked, trying to shake off the shock, but the sight remained unchanged. The floral engravings, the delicate design, it was unmistakable. Without thinking, Arjun stepped forward, his movements drawing curious glances from others in the room. He approached the judge's bench and requested permission to speak privately with the defendant. The judge raised an eyebrow but eventually nodded, allowing it. Confused whispers rippled through the crowd as Anjali was led to a corner of the courtroom to meet him. When they finally stood face to face, Anjali couldn't help but feel intimidated. Here was a man who exuded power and authority, someone who lived in a completely different world from hers. Yet, when he spoke, his voice was surprisingly soft. "Where did you get this ring?" he asked, pointing to her hand. His tone wasn't accusatory. It was filled with urgency, as though the answer mattered more than anything else. Anjali hesitated, unsure how to respond. Why was this stranger so interested in her ring? After a brief pause, she decided to tell the truth. It's mine," she stammered. "My grandmother gave it to me. She said it belonged to someone important a long time ago." Arjun's heart raced. Important? Could it be possible? He leaned closer, studying her face intently. There was no trace of deceit in her expression, only confusion and fear. "Do you know who gave it to your grandmother?" He pressed gently. She shook her head. "I don't know much about it. My grandmother told me stories, though. She said she once cared for a kind girl who stayed in our village after getting separated from her family. That girl left the ring behind before leaving." Every word Anjali spoke sent chills down Arjun's spine. Separated from her family? Kind girl? It couldn't be a coincidence. His mind raced as pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Could this mysterious girl have been Mira? Had she ended up in a village far away from home? And if so, what had happened to her afterward? For a moment, neither of them said anything. The air between them grew heavy with unspoken emotions. Arjun's gaze shifted from the ring to Anjali's face. Despite the circumstances, there was something familiar about her. Her resilience, her quiet strength. It reminded him of Mira. He wanted to ask more questions, to dig deeper, but he knew this wasn't the right time or place. Instead, he straightened up and addressed the judge again. "Your Honor," he said firmly, "I believe there may be more to this situation than meets the eye. I request some time to investigate further before proceeding with the case." The judge looked skeptical, but agreed, adjourning the hearing temporarily. As Anjali was escorted back to her seat, she couldn't stop thinking about the man who had shown such interest in her ring. Who was he? And why did that tiny piece of jewelry mean so much to him? Meanwhile, Arjun stepped outside the courtroom, his mind reeling. The ring was real, it wasn't lost forever, but its reappearance brought more questions than answers. Who was the girl Anjali's grandmother had mentioned? Was she truly Mira? And if she was, what had become of her? As he stood there, staring out at the city skyline, Arjun realized that finding the truth wouldn't be easy. It would require patience, determination, and perhaps even confronting parts of himself he'd rather leave buried. But one thing was certain. This chance encounter with Anjali wasn't random. It was fate nudging him toward closure and maybe, just maybe, redemption. Back inside the courtroom, Anjali sat quietly, clutching her hands together. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in days she allowed herself a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was about to end. After the courtroom session ended, Arjun Khanna couldn't shake off the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he hadn't imagined. The image of Anjali's ring lingered in his mind like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. After years of searching, he knew he couldn't let this go, not now, not when the answers might be within reach. For the first time in years, something inside him stirred, a mix of hope and fear, curiosity and dread. Determined to uncover the truth, Arjun wasted no time. That same evening, he called upon his trusted team of private investigators. These were people who had worked with him for years, handling everything from corporate espionage cases to personal matters. They were discreet, efficient, and knew how to dig deep without leaving traces. When they arrived at his penthouse, Arjun laid out what little information he had: the story of the ring, Anjali's grandmother caring for a kind girl, and the possibility that this girl could have been Mira. At first, the investigators listened quietly, their expressions unreadable. But as Arjun described the details, the floral engravings on the ring, its sentimental value, and the timeline of Mira's disappearance, they began to take notes. Their interest piqued. One of them, an older man named Ramesh, leaned forward and asked, "Sir, do you think there's any chance your daughter might still be alive?" The question hung heavy in the air. Arjun hesitated before answering. Deep down, he wanted to believe it was possible, but logic told him otherwise. 5 years was a long time. If Mira were alive, surely she would have found a way to contact him by now. Still, he couldn't dismiss the possibility entirely. "I don't know," he admitted softly, "but I need to find out. Whatever happened, I deserve to know." With that, the investigation began. Over the next few days, the team scoured every lead they could find. They traveled to the remote village Anjali had mentioned, speaking to elders and villagers who remembered her grandmother vividly. She was a kind woman, they said, always willing to help those in need. And yes, many recalled the story of a young girl who had shown up one day, injured and disoriented, claiming to have gotten separated from her family during a trip. The villagers described the girl as gentle and well-spoken, with a smile that lit up even the darkest corners of their small community. She stayed with Anjali's grandmother for several weeks, slowly recovering from her injuries. During that time, she shared bits and pieces of her life, how she loved painting, how her father worked hard to give her everything she needed, and how much she missed home. But despite her longing to return, she never revealed exactly where she came from or how to reach her family. Tragically, the girl's health took a turn for the worse. Despite the best efforts of the villagers and Anjali's grandmother, she succumbed to complications from her earlier injuries. Heartbroken, the villagers held a small funeral for her and buried her near the edge of the forest. As a token of gratitude, they gave the ring she had left behind to Anjali's grandmother, asking her to pass it on to someone worthy. When the investigators returned with these findings, Arjun felt as though the floor beneath him had cracked open. It was both heartbreaking and relieving to finally have some clarity about Mira's fate. She hadn't abandoned him. She hadn't run away. She had simply been caught in circumstances beyond her control. Knowing this didn't make the pain any less sharp, but it gave him a sense of closure he hadn't felt in years. But there was more to the story than just grief. As Arjun pieced together the events, he realized something else. Anjali wasn't just a random person connected to the ring. Through her grandmother, she was indirectly tied to Mira's final days. Without realizing it, she had become a bridge between Arjun and the daughter he had lost. This realization sparked a new emotion within him: gratitude. Gratitude not only for the role Anjali's family played in caring for Mira, but also for the kindness she herself showed during their brief encounter in the courtroom. Arjun decided to meet Anjali again, this time outside the confines of the legal system. He arranged for her release temporarily, ensuring she wouldn't face further trouble while the investigation continued. When they met at a quiet cafe near the courthouse, Anjali looked nervous, unsure why such a powerful man would want to speak to her again. Arjun did his best to put her at ease, ordering tea and snacks before diving into the conversation. "I wanted to thank you," he began, his voice steady yet warm. "You've given me something I thought I'd never have, answers about my daughter." Anjali blinked in surprise. "Your daughter?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Arjun nodded. "Yes. The ring you wear, it belonged to her. Her name was Mira. She disappeared 5 years ago, and I've spent every day since then wondering what happened to her." As he spoke, tears welled up in Anjali's eyes. She hadn't known the full significance of the ring until now. All those years, she had worn it as a family heirloom, never imagining it carried such a tragic history. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, her voice trembling. "If I had known—" "You couldn't have known," Arjun interrupted gently. "None of this is your fault. In fact, I owe you, and your grandmother, a great debt. You cared for my daughter when she needed it most. That means more to me than words can express." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the revelation settled over them like a thick fog. Finally, Anjali broke the silence. "What happens now?" she asked hesitantly. Arjun sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Now, we move forward. For starters, I'll make sure all charges against you are dropped. You shouldn't have to suffer because of something you had no part in." He paused, studying her face carefully. "And if you're willing, I'd like to help you build a better future. You remind me of Mira. Strong, resilient, and full of potential. I want to see you thrive." Anjali's eyes widened in shock. Help her? After everything that had happened, this man, a stranger technically, was offering her a lifeline? She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to refuse, fearing it might come with strings attached. But another part, the part that had spent years struggling to survive, yearned for the opportunity to break free from the cycle of poverty. I don't know what to say," she admitted honestly. "Why would you do this for me?" Arjun's smile was faint but genuine, carrying a mix of sadness and hope. "Because," he said softly, leaning forward in his chair, "life has a way of connecting us in ways we don't always understand. Your grandmother cared for my daughter when she needed it most, and now you're here, wearing the ring that meant so much to her. Maybe it's fate. Or maybe it's just life giving me a second chance to do something good." Anjali listened intently, her heart pounding. She had spent her entire life believing that kindness rarely came without a price. People helped others because they expected something in return. That was the harsh reality she knew. But as she looked into Arjun's eyes, she saw sincerity. There was no hidden agenda, no ulterior motive, just a man trying to make sense of his loss while extending a hand to someone who reminded him of what he had lost. Still, accepting help from someone like Arjun felt overwhelming. It wasn't just about pride, it was about trust. Could she really rely on this man, whose world seemed galaxies apart from hers? What if things went wrong? What if she ended up owing him more than she could ever repay? Sensing her hesitation, Arjun leaned back and gave her space. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said calmly. "You don't have to decide anything right now, just think about it. All I'm offering is an opportunity, a chance to change your life for the better. You've already shown incredible strength by surviving everything life has thrown at you. Imagine what you could achieve with a little support." His words struck a chord deep within Anjali. For years, she had carried the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, fighting battles alone. The idea of having someone believe in her, not out of pity but out of respect, was almost too much to comprehend. Yet, there was something comforting about it, like finding shelter after being caught. in a storm for too long. Over the next few days, Arjun kept his promise. He used his influence to clear Anjali's name completely, ensuring that all charges against her were dropped. The police issued a public statement apologizing for their mistake, though Anjali knew the apology wouldn't erase the fear and humiliation she had endured. Still, it was a start, a small step toward reclaiming her dignity. Once the legal hurdles were out of the way, Arjun invited Anjali to visit his office. At first, she hesitated, intimidated by the thought of stepping into a world she didn't belong to. But curiosity got the better of her, and one morning she found herself standing outside a towering glass building in the heart of Mumbai. The lobby was sleek and modern, filled with people dressed in sharp suits and polished shoes. Compared to them, Anjali felt out of place in her simple cotton sari, clutching her worn bag tightly. But Arjun greeted her warmly, putting her at ease. He introduced her to his team, explaining that she would be joining the company as an intern. "Don't worry," he assured her with a reassuring smile. "You won't be thrown into anything you're not ready for. We'll start slow and see where your strengths lie. This isn't charity, it's an investment. I believe in you." At first, Anjali struggled to adapt. Everything around her moved at lightning speed, and the jargon people used made her head spin. But she refused to give up. Every day she arrived early and stayed late, determined to learn as much as she could. Her colleagues noticed her dedication and began offering guidance, helping her navigate the complexities of the corporate world. What surprised everyone, including Anjali herself, was how quickly she excelled. Despite her lack of formal education, she possessed a natural ability to connect with people. Whether it was resolving conflicts between team members or coming up with creative solutions to problems, she approached every task with empathy and determination. Slowly but surely, she earned the respect of those around her. As months passed, Anjali grew more confident in her role. She discovered talents she never knew she had, and realized that she was capable of far more than she'd ever imagined. More importantly, she found joy in her work, a feeling she hadn't experienced since she was a child playing among the flowers in her village. For Arjun, watching Anjali blossom was bittersweet. On one hand, he took immense pride in seeing her succeed. She reminded him of Mira, the same resilience, the same spark of goodness that made her shine even in the darkest moments. On the other hand, her success brought back memories of his daughter, reminding him of the dreams he would never see fulfilled. Yet instead of pulling him deeper into grief, Anjali's presence became a source of healing. She filled a void he hadn't realized existed, becoming not just an employee but a friend. Together, they decided to honor Mira's memory in a meaningful way. Using part of his wealth, Arjun established a foundation aimed at helping underprivileged children access education and healthcare. Anjali played a key role in shaping its mission and programs, drawing inspiration from her own struggles. They named it Mira's Hope, dedicating it to all the young girls and boys who deserved a brighter future. The launch of the foundation marked a turning point for both of them. For Arjun, it was a way to channel his pain into purpose, ensuring that Mira's legacy lived on through acts of kindness. For Anjali, it was proof that no matter how difficult life became, there was always a way to rise above it. And sometimes, help came from the most unexpected places. As they stood side by side at the inauguration ceremony, surrounded by cheering crowds and smiling faces, neither of them could have predicted how far they'd come. From a chance encounter in a courtroom, to building a bond rooted in shared loss and hope, their journey was a testament to the power of human connection. Life had thrown them both into storms, but together, they had found calm waters, and in doing so, they had created ripples of change that would touch countless lives. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. Months turned into years, and Anjali's life transformed in ways she could never have imagined. From a flower seller struggling to make ends meet, she became a respected figure within Arjun's company. Her journey wasn't easy. There were days when self-doubt crept in, moments when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming, but she persevered. With each challenge she faced, she grew stronger, more confident and more determined to prove that her past didn't define her. Arjun watched her progress with pride. He saw how she handled difficult situations with grace and intelligence, how she inspired others with her kindness and resilience. It was as if Mira's spirit lived on through her, an idea that brought him comfort even as it stirred bittersweet memories. Over time, their bond deepened. They weren't just employer and employee anymore. They had become family in every sense except blood. Anjali often visited Arjun at his penthouse, sharing meals and stories about their day. Sometimes they'd sit together by the window, staring out at the city skyline while reminiscing about Mira. Arjun would tell her about his daughter's dreams, her laughter, and the little quirks that made her unique. Anjali listened intently, cherishing these glimpses into the girl whose life had unknowingly touched hers. In return, she shared tales of her own childhood, growing up in the slums, helping her mother sell vegetables, and finding joy in the simplest things. Through these conversations, they built a bridge between their worlds, blending sorrow and hope into something beautiful. One evening, as they sat sipping tea, Arjun handed Anjali a small box wrapped in delicate paper. "Open it," he said with a smile. Inside, she found the silver ring, the same one that had started this incredible journey. She looked up at him, confused. "But isn't this yours?" she asked hesitantly. "It belongs to you now," Arjun replied gently. "You've earned it, not because of where you come from or what happened in the past, but because of who you are. You carry Mira's legacy in your heart, and I want you to keep it alive." Tears welled up in Anjali's eyes as she slipped the ring back onto her finger. This time, it didn't feel like a burden or a mystery. It felt like a promise. A promise to honor Mira's memory by continuing to do good in the world, no matter how tough life got. With the foundation thriving under their leadership, Anjali and Arjun expanded its reach beyond Mumbai. They traveled to villages across the country, setting up schools, health clinics, and vocational training centers for children and young adults. Everywhere they went, they saw faces filled with hope, children eager to learn, parents grateful for opportunities they never thought possible. Each success story fueled their determination to keep going, to create a ripple effect of positive change. But it wasn't just about big gestures. Anjali never forgot her roots. Whenever she passed by her old neighborhood, she stopped to chat with the vendors and neighbors who had once been part of her daily life. She donated funds to improve living conditions in the slums, ensuring clean water, proper sanitation, and better housing for families like hers. To those who knew her before, she was still the same kind-hearted girl who sold flowers. But now, she was also proof that dreams could come true if you believed in yourself and had someone willing to give you a chance. As for Arjun, working alongside, Anjali helped heal wounds he thought would never close. Watching her grow reminded him of the joy Mira brought into his life, allowing him to celebrate her memory instead of mourning her loss. He realized that love wasn't finite. It didn't disappear when someone left. It simply transformed, finding new ways to exist in the world. And in Anjali, he found not only a friend, but also a reason to keep moving forward. Their partnership extended beyond work and philanthropy. Together, they became advocates for social justice, using their platform to raise awareness about issues affecting marginalized communities. They spoke at conferences, wrote articles, and collaborated with other organizations to tackle problems like poverty, education inequality, and gender discrimination. Their message was simple yet powerful. Everyone deserved a fair shot at life, regardless of where they came from. Over time, Mira's hope became synonymous with transformation. Stories of its impact spread far and wide, inspiring people from all walks of life to join the cause. Volunteers poured in, donors contributed generously, and beneficiaries began giving back in their own ways. What started as a tribute to one girl evolved into a movement driven by countless individuals united by a shared vision of a better tomorrow. For Anjali, the highlight of her journey came when she returned to her village after years away. The Mai place looked different now, brighter, cleaner, and buzzing with energy. Children ran around wearing uniforms, laughing and playing games outside the school Arjun and she had built. Elderly women sat in groups, knitting and chatting, their faces glowing with contentment. Even the riverbank where she used to sell flowers had been transformed into a community garden, providing fresh produce for local families. Standing there, surrounded by familiar sights and sounds, Anjali felt a profound sense of gratitude. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her the value of compassion and sacrifice. She thought about Meera, whose ring symbolized courage and connection. And she thought about Arjun, who had shown her that kindness could transcend boundaries and change lives, including her own. Life hadn't erased its scars, from the hardships of her childhood to the pain of losing Meera, but it had given her tools to turn those scars into strengths. Every struggle, every triumph, every moment of doubt and hope had shaped her into the person she was today. And as she stood there, hand in hand with Arjun, looking out at the future they had created together, she knew one thing for certain. No matter how dark the night, dawn always breaks, and sometimes it brings with it unexpected gifts that remind us of the beauty of being human.